stay on time. Look, we know that the marketplace is changing. We can talk all day about that. We know that the workforce is changing, and I've got a really cool graphic to show you. Should we be good now?
We should be good now.
Okay. Yeah, we're good now. Cool. All right, so let's jump back. So we talked about the dating apps. By the way, how would you guys define yourselves? Those of you who are lawyers, what else would you put in your bio? Or would you put something before lawyer? Recovering. I've seen that before. Okay. Anything else?
The good kind of lawyer.
The good kind of lawyer. Okay. All right. I like that. Anything else?
Can-do lawyer.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we know that the marketplace is changing. Great. We can talk all day about this. The workforce is changing. By 2020, we've got 5 different generations in the workplace. And that's just not in the US. It's in China. It's in Brazil. It's in Russia. So this is a global issue. We've also got changing structures. Companies are changing the way that we work. We no longer have to go in every day. We can go remotely. I have a friend who is a recovering lawyer, and he has his own private firm now. He was head of Latin America for a global law firm, and he has a chief scent officer at his company. Law firms more and more every day, every week, are having chief innovation officers. So this really is changing the way that we approach our profession and the work that we do. All right, so I did a lot of cool stuff before I went to law school. I was in broadcasting, I lived in China, I have all these interests, I've been coding a really long time, but when I got to law school, they told me, stop, leave it at the front door. None of this matters anymore. And I kind of felt like this sparkly little unicorn that landed in the middle of all these dressage horses, and I just felt like I didn't fit. So I didn't plan to talk about this, but we're going to talk about it anyway. So this is a picture of me and my trial team partner from, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. And as I was telling her name's Rachel, I was telling her about this. She's also no longer practicing. I was telling her about today's conference, and these are texts that she sent me today. My dream is to be a legal hacker. So cool, I just shouted in my apartment. So that goes to show you that the work that we're doing is great. We should continue to spread the word and get more people involved. Okay, so back to this really, really great looking picture. It's not so great. In fact, that was one of the saddest times of my life because I had checked all the boxes. I was top of my class. I was on law review. I was doing trial team. I was doing all the big law callback stuff. And you know where I ended up? And my dad is watching this in the live stream, so I know that he can totally vouch for this. I ended up in a parking garage in Miami, in downtown Miami, outside of a big law firm, in like 95-degree heat, sweating and crying. And it was after an all-day callback, and I called my dad, and I said, Dad, I feel like the Dementors, you know, from Harry Potter, I feel like they've sucked the soul out of me, and I feel like I've worked so hard, and I put aside everything that makes me me, and what am I supposed to do, right? Where am I supposed to go? And then I found Law Without Walls. I did it as a 2L. I now run it, which is amazing. And it really is an amazing collaboratory that allows people to change their lives and change the lives of others. So before I tell you about it, I can tell you a little bit about how it came about. This reminds me of something that Dan showed at the very beginning of the morning. The law market is pretty resistant to change, right? Legal educators, you'll hear from Kyle in a little bit, and as a legal educator, I can say this, we do have our heads stuck in the sand sometimes. So yesterday's legal services market, we are really reluctant to change. Does anybody know what this is? It's a 35-year-old Twinkie. So people who are decision makers, oftentimes at law firms, don't want to change things. They want to do things the same way they've been doing them for 35 years. That's not good. Okay, so of course the legal services market is changing. It's becoming more complex. Technology is changing the way that we do things. Who knows what this is? No, try again, not a brain. Anything else? Close, it's cauliflower. Isn't that cool? All right, so there's a question about whether or not technology is making us more or less efficient and more or less effective. This is one of my favorite gifts in the entire world. It's basically taking your desktop to desktop. And it really is, when we've got so much power in the palms of our hands, it's really making it harder for us to, at the end of the day or when we're going to bed or whatever, to put the world away, right? All right. So globalization is changing the way that we do things, and also competition. So those lawyers and non-lawyers, right, the aliens. And we shouldn't be scared because if anything, our lessons in collaboration show us that we have got to work together, no matter who we are and the background that we come from, which is one of the great things about today. All right, so Kyle is definitely going to talk about this, so I'm going to leave this up to him. But law schools are producing more lawyers than the market can absorb, and law schools are training for jobs that don't yet exist. Who here is working in a job that probably wouldn't have existed when they went to law school or thought about law school? Right, okay, so I see a lot of hands, and I see a lot of young people raising their hands, which goes to show you that this is a real thing. So we've got to look at different challenges. We've got to teach different skills. We've got to use different tools, and we've got to set different goals. And at Law Without Walls, our goal is to change the lens through which we view legal education and practice. So I could tell you about our mission statement, but I've got a really cool video. Hopefully the sound works. If it doesn't, I'll walk you through it. Phil, that's your fault.
Law Without Walls is a part virtual collaboratory designed to do two things: to change the way we practice and to change the way we train lawyers of today and tomorrow.
Law Without Walls is a program that brings business and law students together with mentors from around the world to work on solutions to real problems facing the legal industry.
Innovation is Law Without Walls. That's all Law Without Walls is about. And it's through innovation that we hone those important skills. It's through creation that we get so much out of Law Without Walls.
Law Without Walls is all about innovation in legal education methodologies, innovation by bringing diverse and different universities, innovation by organizing and holding the kickoff and the closing event in different locations.
Really is a unique opportunity to become part of this group of people who really share the same vision about challenging the way we think about law, challenging the way that we practice law.
Law Without Walls is important because it teaches skills, trains skills for 21st century lawyering. Skills like cultural competency, project management, business acumen, leadership.
Training people to do things in 10 years' time that we don't quite know what will exist. We don't know what the jobs will be, and so we're trying to give them a range of skills so they can adapt to whatever those jobs will be. My own belief is they need to be good lawyers, but also good business people, good marketeers, good people in terms of relating to other people. Perhaps different skills than been taught traditionally. It's really important they get those skills right.
The skills of the future are the people who can put different ideas, different disciplines, different approaches, different people together to create an approach to solving complex problems.
I think students should participate in these kinds of events because it gives you a broader perspective of the legal profession. It helps you with the skills like communication. You can network, you can meet partners from different law firms, but also give you an entrepreneurial perspective of what is the legal profession.
I already feel that I am a more open-minded person, that I'm more willing to take risks, and that I already appreciate the importance of innovation in the legal profession to an extent that I couldn't imagine yesterday.
Law Without Walls is a community of change agents, people that want to see change in the law market. Non-lawyers, lawyers, business professionals, marketers, entrepreneurs, regulators, venture capitalists, we all come together to try to change our world, and in the process, we built a community.
Okay, so is our goal to take law students and have them say, screw it, I never want to practice, I'm taking off this suit, and I'm going to be an entrepreneur? No, it's to teach the skills that aren't being taught in law school that are essential to 21st century success. A lot of our students end up becoming entrepreneurs, and that's great, and I can tell you about the cool things they've done and where they've landed, but most of them do go on to practice, but they practice differently. There are a lot of people involved in Law Without Walls in the room. If you guys can quickly raise your hands. We've got several back there all around. So if you want to talk to anybody about their personal experience in LWOW, feel free to talk to any of them or me. So again, we're trying to break down these barriers, right? Barriers between institutions, barriers between faculty and students, barriers between cultures, and break down different hierarchies that really prohibit us from growing and being the best that we can. Of course, we want more permeability between legal education and legal services, and a mentality of law without walls. All right, so here we go. We know that innovation must be supported by open and diverse collaboration, which is exactly what we do. We're a part virtual collaboratory focused at the intersection of law, business, innovation, and technology, and we teach and foster 21st century lawyering or 21st century professional skills. We're over 30 different law and business schools from around the world on every continent except Antarctica. 15 different countries and over 100 students every year. Here are some of our schools. We were founded at the University of Miami, where I'm based, and we've got over 1,000 people in our community, and again, several are here today. From big law firms, government agencies, we've got professional magicians who have a second career as a lawyer. We've got students who are 19, we have students who are 45, really every walk of life. And all of these people come to Law Without Walls and bring their experiences, and they're all equally valued. We have a first name, no suit policy, meaning everybody goes by their first name, and you can't wear a suit. Which is really great because it helps students who might come from a different culture that doesn't necessarily encourage broad networking or open conversations to be able to go up to a senior partner from a different country where they might not otherwise have that opportunity and feel like they're on equal footing to be able to talk to this person, ask them questions, get their perspective, and share information. Okay, so what are these 21st century lawyering or professional skills? They're things like problem solving, project management, cultural competency, leadership, presentation skills, business acumen. How many of you guys ever took a project management class in law school? Okay, how many of you wish you would have? Okay, what about presentation skills? Did anybody teach you how to make a presentation in law school? Okay, I see one head nodding, but you probably went to a really awesome school that was very forward-thinking, because not many do. And of course, lawyers and business people often don't know how to talk to each other. We can't speak the same language, but we depend on each other, so it's really important that we learn how to communicate. Okay, so how does it work? Well, we take teams of 2 to 3 law and business students from different universities in different countries, and then we give them an academic mentor, so a faculty member from a different university, an entrepreneur mentor, a business mentor, and a lawyer mentor. And the number of mentors on the team and changes, and I know that some people in this room have been an entrepreneur mentor 1 year and maybe a lawyer mentor, so different people wear different hats, different years. We're very open, very collaborative, very flexible, but the key is diversity and support. So you can go on our website and see the kinds of topics that our teams look at. They're really broad. So for example, cyber justice, using technology to provide legal services to the underserved around the globe. And they're probably split up about 25% access to justice, 25% court litigation technology, 25% legal education, and then 25% all other kinds of stuff. Okay, so the team's goal is to investigate this really broad topic and find the cracks and gaps within it. They're really problem finding, not just problem solving. And they want to turn these problems into opportunities. They want to find these gaps and really make a solution for change. So here's an example. This team had trickle-down justice, access to justice for vulnerable client populations. And they created an NGO that linked people who fought against human trafficking in a way that people who wanted to do bad stuff with human trafficking couldn't get a hold of each other. So it was a really secure networking, information sharing website for advocates who fought against human trafficking. And they got really great funding and press from the United Nations in the 2012 Summer Olympics. And they were eventually absorbed by a Thai NGO, which was then absorbed by a global NGO, and they sit on the board of that, which is really, really cool. Of the team members, one was a Pakistani woman who is going to school in London. She's a practicing attorney in Pakistan. One was from the University of Miami. She's practicing in DC. And the third third was from Stanford, and she is now a law professor. So it really goes to show you the diversity of these projects and how these projects come along. We've got 3 offerings. You can find out about them on our website. The differences, the primary difference is that one of our offerings is part virtual, part in person. The other 2 are all virtual. But regardless of the model, they all go through the same 3 phases. So we start with the kickoff, which is for the part in-person model. It's 2 days of intensive idea generation, team building. We take personality and work style assessments. We do a lot of stuff like the cartoon stuff that we just did. It's really fun, and that's where we lay the foundation for what the teams are going to do over the next 4 months. Then we move to the virtual teaming phase, which I'll get into in a second. And then finally, the 3rd phase is the composium. And that's where our students and their team members, their mentors, pitch what we call their projects of worth. These are their solutions. So they pitch their projects, their prototypes, and their business plan to a panel of judges, including venture capitalists, in front of about 200 to 300 people. How many of you ever had to do that in law school? How many of you have ever had to do that as a practicing attorney, to talk to so many people? Okay, I see a couple of hands here, but it's rare, and this is kind of a self-selecting crowd, but it's rare that people get that kind of opportunity. All right, so again, we talked about the kickoff. Have you guys ever done this spaghetti and marshmallow tower thing? Okay, so we do a lot of like little brain hacks and teasers, and then we also do our virtual kickoff where we have sometimes 100 different video cameras on at once. It gets a little crazy, it's a lot of fun. Then we move to our virtual teaming phase. So after the kickoff, everyone goes home or goes back to their lives, and we meet once a week on Adobe Connect, which is the platform we use for, that's the closest thing we have to a class. Every week we have a different topic, and we have featured thought leaders. I know Larry has been a thought leader. John, I'm sure you've been a thought leader on one of our sessions. James, Dan, I think you guys have both been thought leaders at certain points too. And this is where we have experts, thought leaders, come on and share their stories, share their expertise. And our entire community, students, mentors, whomever, come onto Adobe Connect and they interact live with video, audio, and chat with these experts and ask them the tough questions. But it's really an awesome way to connect. And then also, teams are working using all kinds of tools to build their projects of worth together. So that's the virtual teaming part. It's really a global endeavor because for some people, they'll log on with beer because it's happy hour. And some people, for the virtual sessions, will actually be having breakfast. So you'll see people in pajamas, you'll see people in party clothes, but regardless, everyone makes it a point to come together. We've had students who, because of where they live, they're on at 3 in the morning. We've had students log in from remote areas. We've had students get caught in a rainstorm and so not want to miss the session that they pull over to the side of the highway, tether their laptop to their phone, and still make it. All right, so the Composium, again, it's where our students pitch their final presentation. So we do one in person and one online. We've got really great multidisciplinary judges, usually an academic, practitioner, venture capitalist, entrepreneur. And then there's a great prize at the end, in addition to a lot of pride and all the skills that you've learned. So you might be thinking, okay, this is cool, why should I participate? Granted, I'm talking to a really self-selecting crowd right now. There are a ton of benefits. You gain all these skills, you hone all these skills, you learn so much. Our LWOW mentors in the room can tell you that the mentors actually learn more than the students every year, and I would say that's accurate. Being on that side now. You get access to this really great network of 1,000 people all around the world who are absolute change agents. You get to be a part of this really cool community, and if you're looking for talent, this is a great way to find awesome talent, like-minded, talented people. You want a law student who can code, who speaks 3 languages, who can come up with an ad campaign in the middle of the night? Come talk to us. We got them. So again, it's also really cool to hang out at this intersection. Business, technology, innovation, and law, there's a lot happening. There are a lot of cool people involved. And at that intersection through Law Without Walls, we get to explore. We get to problem solve. We get to innovate. We get to create, collaborate, and engage with each other and really engage with who we are as individuals. All right, so past students have said all kinds of great things. It's given them all kinds of skills. It's changed the way that they've done their jobs. It's the best thing that they've done in law school, hands down. We hear this year in and year out. And then I really identify with this one. Upon entering law school, it's easy to lose sight of your creativity, which once seemed so clear and inseparable from your identity. I will never forget LWOW, as it gave me the ability to recapture a part of myself that I had fear I had forgotten or lost. All right, so thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, come find me. I'm around. Again, my name is Erika, and you can always reach me at erika@lwow.org. Thanks.
Well, it's tough to follow Erika, and I got to say I'm really proud that she is one of the my National Advisory Council members, along with Dan Lear over there. So they both are, very big inspirations for my organization. So my name is Kyle McEntee. I'm the Executive Director of Law School Transparency. We were founded in 2009, and it was founded by myself and Patrick Lynch. And we did so in response to a fabric of deceptive statistics that law schools marketed to prospective law students, and that was blessed by the accreditor of law schools, the American Bar Association. And so we named the organization very deliberately with transparency in the name because we wanted to clearly signal that law schools were not being transparent. And as Erika implied, what they were not being transparent about was the number of jobs available to graduates, and this is a problem that went back decades, not just the most recent recession. So we use that as a jumping off point to lobby for changes to the minimum standards for reporting and to change the disclosure norms at law schools. And the response afterwards is exactly what you'd hope as any advocate in this room would, which is people responded to the increase in consumer information and they made more informed decisions. Erika, do you have that? Click.
Oh my gosh. There's got to be an app for that.
Maybe someone here can develop it. Got it. So I want to talk a little bit why during this presentation I want to talk a little bit about why my organization has been successful, and hopefully there'll be a lesson in this for other legal hackers. So I moved to my second high school my junior year, and it was a very insular community in North Carolina. I'm also from Raleigh, so we are definitely representing here. But I was not living in Raleigh at that point. But I wanted to connect to people, and it was an insular community, and so what I did was I learned a program, and I participated in an open source message board system. And I have not thought about this open source system in years, and I managed to actually find some of the code, which is pretty exciting. And I'm going to definitely be digging through that on my flight home tomorrow. Okay. Oh, I did not mean to do that. You guys got a preview. So over the last 7 years, we have used technology to advance my organization's mission. And through that, we've substantially changed legal education. And I'm going to give 3 examples of how we did this in a second. But first, I do want to talk just very, very briefly about I'd say the unsung hero in this story and many of the stories that people are telling and will continue to tell throughout any of these legal hacker conferences. And that is the internet. And I love this picture. So the internet democratizes power and influence. How else could 2 law students who just had a good idea substantially change very powerful organizations? We could not have. There's no way around that. And how would we have gotten the attention of national press and the legal trade press and the accreditors and members of Congress? It would not have been possible without us spending that initial $22 on a domain and some server space and putting up a website that I managed to build based on the skills I learned in high school. So the internet helped us to appear a lot larger than we were, essentially, is what was going on. And because our ideas were good, and because we chose the right partners to work with, whether it's journalists, politicians, academics, law school deans, accreditors, no matter who it was about those partnerships that we developed, and we were able to get on people's radar just because of the internet. So I'll now talk through 3 of the things that we've done over the last few years that I think typify how legal education has been hacked. For those not familiar, there's pretty wide consensus that the economic model that law schools operate on is broken. And to say the least, it's very expensive and the cost structure is very difficult to change without substantial burdens on those at the schools. So one of the drivers of the problem, not the only and not even the most important, but one of the important drivers are the U.S. News and Law School rankings. These hold law schools and prospective law students hostage. They poison their decision making and introduce all sorts of nasty incentives that produce that broken economic model or contribute to the production of that broken model. And so what we did was we took the data that we forced out through our lobbying and through the public pressure, and we turned it into a series of websites that prospective students use and policymakers use to make informed decisions, whether it's about law school and whether to go, or about law school and how to regulate them better. So this is actually from our new website, which is not going to come out probably till October, but it's really pretty, I think. So I like showing the screen cap. But essentially what we're doing here is, helping tens of thousands of students every year decide, does this make sense for me? How do I see myself fitting into this profession? And then forcing schools to reckon with the expectations of their students and really taking the power away from those larger institutions and putting it into the hands of consumers is a function of the data and transparency. And it's through that law schools are changing and a lot more can happen. So the second example I want to give is something we termed the Transparency Index. And this is an idea that was not originally ours, and it can be used and will be used many, many times over. What it is an index that uses public pressure and shame to force various behaviors. And so we focused on two things on this chart, but I'll take a step back actually and say the first time we did this, we got a lot of good press. A lot of schools felt pressure from it and they made remedies in important ways rather quickly. And so the second time we changed our strategy, and what we did was we collected all the data about what schools were doing, both in terms of whether they were meeting the minimum requirements for disclosure, and then also if they were exceeding those with voluntary disclosures. And then we sent the schools all of our results and said, you have 3 weeks to fix this. Then we're going public. And within a 3-week period, I talked on the phone with, I think, 119 of the less than 200 law schools at that time. They responded to the incentives that we were setting up. And they were incentives that we were very careful about choosing because we knew, to quote Spider-Man, since we're in a comic book mood, great power comes great responsibility, and that's something we take very seriously. And so what schools were responding to was all those little check marks and X's. And these are probably pretty tough to see. These are just the statistics on the change. And what we did was we released the actual results from our initial pass-through, and then we also updated a live index that produced incentives to actually change behavior. And so, at the 3-week mark, we made our big press push, and then we already had a bunch of schools that were updated, but then a bunch of other schools said, well, we still want to get those green check marks, and that's what they responded to, because they really, really just wanted those green check marks. And I had deans calling saying, how can I get a check mark here? And that's an actual question that these deans at these schools who have these illustrious careers are asking. And people respond to incentives like this. So the third thing ties to both of the previous two. So over the last few years, interest in law school has greatly declined because of the new transparent data, as well as the coverage of the job market and where the economy was not quite working as the way it should, or the markets were not working the way they should. And so in response, we can see here a number of people applying to school has dropped 37%. Anyone who works in any kind of business, if you have a 37% decline in interest, you are screwed. So what schools did is, they were forced to drop enrollment. And this is the enrollment change at every law school between 2010 and 2015. The items, the schools on the right are cut off. They actually go up to about 11 or 1,200 students. But you can see now there are virtually no schools that are enrolling more than 400 students. But if interest declines 37% and enrollment declines 29%, what does that mean? Well, that means you're admitting and enrolling a lot weaker cohort of students. And this is looking at the 25th percentile LSAT score, the admissions test for that virtually all students take. And the change between 2010 and 2015. The black bars represent schools that declined from the right to left, and the green bars increased from left to right. You see, not many schools increased. And what this has translated to is, actually, go back here. So, law schools, because they felt the financial pressure, because they could not cut further in terms of the number of students they were enrolling to meet their expenses, they decided that they were going to take these risks that we would say were unjustified. And we've already started to see the results. So this is the mean MBE score, which is a core component of the bar exam in 49 out of 50 states. And this is not the best graphic in terms of being a good choice because where the y-axis is set. But the point really is more that this drop has caused significant declines in the bar passage rates. And it's a result of taking those weaker cohorts. And so looking back here, so the numbers here reflect about half of the drop here. So that means over the next 2-3 years, we're actually going to see continued declines. And so what we did, I could have written a law review article on this, but instead what we did was we put this into a new website that put up clear policy recommendations and clear analysis, and that we had a data visualizer that let you group data and group schools in a variety of different ways so you can more clearly understand the relationships between various problems. And then we released it, and instead of getting a law review article, if you get 1,000 people to read it, it's incredible. But instead, we had tens of thousands of people reading this, and then on top of that, millions reading news stories in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, et cetera, on this. And again, it all comes back to the fact that the internet, right? It's because we have this centralized location to point people to and do really neat things with, it allows you to affect monumental change with much less resistance than you otherwise would. So I didn't actually identify as a legal hacker until yesterday. Thank you. And it was after Jameson was practicing his introductory speech from this morning. And I started to kind of look back at what I do and kind of see, exactly why Erika put us in touch and decided that I should come up and speak. And, for me, I enjoy looking at structural problems, identifying what needs to change as part of those structures, and then thinking creatively about how to actually enforce that change. And that's exactly what the hacker mentality is, I think. So thank you guys for being an inspiration for me.
Good afternoon. I'm Tony Luppino from University of Missouri, Kansas City. My job here is to prove that Jonathan Askin was wrong when he suggested he was the oldest guy in the room. But Jonathan's a good friend. He also, you might recall, called me out for being probably the least tech-savvy person in the room. That may be true, but fortunately he and Daza Greenwood and our dean, Ellen Sooney, and our CTO and one of our law librarians, Michael Roback, have adopted me as a project, and that's how I get to be here. I direct our entrepreneurship programs, which Erika mentioned a title that didn't exist when I was in law school. I'm a 1982 graduate from law school. There was no director of entrepreneurship programs at a law school, and I think that's a good sign. I practiced for 19 years before I started teaching 15 years ago full-time. And one of the first things I noticed was that in practice, I was a business and tax planning lawyer. I worked in teams, interdisciplinary teams, all the time. And yet I'm standing there one day teaching a business planning class to just law students, and the business school is 50 feet away. And I'm thinking, why aren't we in the same room doing this? And I had the good fortune of getting into a Kauffman Foundation program. Anybody know the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation? Do some of you know the Kauffman Foundation? They support entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education very strongly across the country and the globe. They ran a program where they took 11 faculty from 4 different universities and threw them together to design interdisciplinary courses in entrepreneurship education. So I walked in the first day, there were 11 of us from 4 universities. I was the only one from a law school, and immediately it was, who had the bright idea to invite a lawyer to an entrepreneurship thing? Why would you do that? Which I took as a challenge, and I think a lot of us did, and that led to a course I've been teaching for 11 years, it's entrepreneurship and new venture creation, law, MBA, engineering students writing business plans together, entering them in a competition. That's where I learned project planning, Erika, from the engineering professors. So one of the things I think in terms of where we are here with Legal Hackers is that we have a unique opportunity to join you with some other complementary movements in a very powerful way. I think when we talk about legal education as something that desperately needs to be hacked, I think most of us would agree with that. Who agrees with that? Law schools need to be hacked some? Yeah, I think so. And I think what that means is that we need to see more projects-based education. It needs to be interdisciplinary, and we shouldn't be worried about everything just being in our institution. When I first got into looking at interdisciplinary courses, all of us, I hadn't been in academia, and people started lecturing me about silos and silo mentality, and law schools being like particular monuments to siloness, I think. And I noticed looking around, 10, 12 years ago, that I'd walk into business schools, and there'd be 4 to 6 seat tables, places for people to meet and talk in teams. Law schools, lots of one-person study carols. So when we talk about lawyers, non-lawyers, there you go. Well, anyway, I've been to now 3 events in Brooklyn at intersections of law and entrepreneurship and technology. They've all been in Boston speak, wicked cool. I grew up in New England, so I'm authorized to say that, even though I live in Kansas City now. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of them, and we're certainly not the only law school doing this. There are schools that are mixing law, technology, and innovation in creative ways across the country, in the Vermont Law School, in Suffolk, and Michigan State, the University of Washington. But this one evolved from a conference just like this. So I want to talk about the ability to create these kinds of project-based interdisciplinary courses, and then I want to describe some networks that some of you may know about, maybe not everybody, and I think Legal Hackers needs to be connected with them. So here's the deal. We had a conference that the Kauffman Foundation sponsored in July of 2014. It was our dean's idea. She believes very strongly that technology will improve the delivery of legal services, that it will help us close the embarrassing access to justice gap, and will make legal education more effective. And among the people there were Daza Greenwood and Jonathan Askin. And it was really, this course that I'm going to describe was really Daza's idea. Are you here, Daza? There he is. Oh, you're right there, right in front of me. He said, we have these hackathons, and you had educated me on that, and Jonathan had, and it was fascinating, but they tend to be, a big spurt of activity over a weekend. He said, why don't we have a semester-long kind of hackathon in the form of a course? I think you analogized it somewhat to a studio course at MIT. And so we put this together over the space of 3 or 4 weeks and launched it in the fall of 2014. The notion was to hack projects all semester and then have what Daza dubbed a prototype jam at the end of it, and have technologists and other people come in and test some of these tools and try and critique them so that we could iterate and improve them. It's worked so well, and we got so many projects from the city of Kansas City, Missouri, which is why I'm going to veer into CivicLawTech here. We've now run that course every semester, that fall, every spring, every summer since then. Sometimes the nature of the projects is that they will dip across different semesters, and that's okay. Here's an example of the students we've had from different disciplines involved. We've also had some from, we're looking to get some from health sciences. We have had the nursing school involved in at least one project. We think it's good for law students to be learning how to work with people trained in these other disciplines and for them to solve problems together. That's the interdisciplinary part. Here's the interinstitutional part. So in this one course, we've been working on several projects every semester So our law school, Jonathan's been involved, and students from the Brooklyn Law School, Daza from the MIT Media Lab, Missouri Western State University. While we were building these apps, we found that they had a graduate student unit that specialized in user experience testing. So now as we're building them, they're building tests to go along with them. That's a school that's about an hour and a half away from us. We work with the city of Kansas City. Many of our projects come from them. It's really an unlimited amount. We work with the local chapter of Code for KC all the time. They have hackers working with our students. We have computer science students from the School of Computing and Engineering on these teams, but they deal with the Code for America Brigade hackers too, and they work the projects together. KC Legal Hackers, Brian Wilson, one of our recent grads, would have been here right now, but he's got this bar exam thing in like 3 days, and so he wasn't able to come out right now. And then some local organizations that support we have Google Fiber in Kansas City, and we're expanding a lot because of that. So KC Digital Drive and Think Big partners. And we're in a border city. There's a Kansas City, Missouri, and a Kansas City, Kansas, which I didn't know growing up in New England because everybody in New England thinks the whole world's within 2 hours, and so I was a little bit constrained by that. Now, here's some of the things we're working on. Lots of projects that have to do with automating really arcane regulatory processes in some instances, which the city brought to us. The great joy of working on this is they want to improve what they're doing, much like Ben Kalos does, who we heard from earlier, so they give us these challenges. So just a simple example, one of the projects this semester, we found that if you're a plumbing contractor trying to put the plumbing into a new house and you want to hook up to the water and the sewer, that's like a half a dozen permits from 5 different departments that don't always communicate with each other so well. So we've got students working with somebody from Code for KC to build a sort of an assisted questionnaire, machine-assisted questionnaire, so you answer some questions not repetitively, and it kind of spits out all the permit applications you need, and that's, it's a modest thing. We've had others that have to do with various kinds of initiatives in Kansas City where tech solutions can help. We've got some, we've worked with Neota Logic and Michael Mills on a set of tools, that's what I'm the most involved with, I guess, that have to do with advising startups. These tools, among other things, assist lawyers in solo and small firm practice. Some of you mentioned this earlier, just to throw out some numbers. In the US, 70% of lawyers in private practice are in firms of 10 or fewer lawyers, and 48% roughly are in 1 or 2 person shops. And so they can definitely benefit from the efficiencies of technology in reaching particularly modest means clients, and in this case maybe helping small businesses. And then the one I want to spend the most time on for a few minutes here is the last project, which was the city. Kansas City has some vibrant smart cities initiatives going on. It's been selected by the IEEE to host an International Smart Cities Conference in a few years. It's going to be the first U.S. city to do that. And among other things, like a lot of cities, they're deploying a lot of sensors that will gather a lot of information to try to improve traffic flows, water flows, deal with other health and safety issues. But they came to us and said, we believe in open data. They have a nice open data site. They've done a great job. The folks in the city running that, Eric Roche is one of the data officers doing that. But they were concerned that we don't want to violate privacy laws or do things that just, even if they don't violate the law, are not good practice. They wanted us to look at, can we give some advice to their legal department, do some research to help them think this through and develop really strong policies. Now, open data, we've heard about a lot today. Ben is a champion of open data. I think most people in this room are. It's not a particularly new concept, I don't think, in this country, at least in other countries as well. But in this country, it's at least 229 years old. So if you take a look at this fellow, he gets quoted a lot, this Thomas Jefferson guy. He said, the basis of our governments being the opinion of the people, we got to keep that first. And if he had to choose between government and no newspapers or newspapers and no government, he'd choose the latter. And then he said, so everybody should, now, gender problem from this era, just the same at the first sentence of the Declaration of Independence, better would be man and woman, should receive those papers, be capable of reading them. So if you think about 1787, that means we're going to print them somehow, not with a particularly automated printer, and then we're going to get a carriage with horses and move them around. Now we have all this technology. The notion of getting information out to people so they can hold government accountable is a whole different ballgame now. But as Ben was saying this morning, you can't just throw a bunch of stuff up there on the web with a bunch of legalese still in it and view that as everybody's capable of reading them. You cannot have law being accessible if only lawyers can read it. So again, our lawyer, non-lawyer thing. So a lot of us are fans of open data, open information. That's why we have sunshine laws. Louis Brandeis, you know, sunshine is the best disinfectant. But we also have other laws that go the other direction, privacy laws that are protecting people's information, and everybody will say, well, we won't release personally identifiable information. Well, with the power of computers, how do we know when different data sets might be aggregated in ways where something you thought was anonymous, perhaps not quite so anonymous? So there's some tension there. So what we've had the students do this semester is they've looked at 25 different US policies and several in other countries, the EU, London, Singapore, Seoul, and they're expanding that. Has anybody here read an article called Push, Pull, and Spill from some folks at the University of Washington? Okay, the University of Washington, a fellow named Ryan Callow from the law school and several other people from urban design and other parts of their campus got in a very similar project with Seattle. And they were going in to see how they were dealing with privacy issues in the midst of open data initiatives. It's a terrific read. I highly recommend it. The push meant we're going to push some information out on our open data site so everybody can have it. The pull meant, well, there might be some information that's somewhat sensitive. We don't want to just put it out there openly. You may have to go through an information request to get that. And spill means, oops, we didn't mean for that to get out, and somebody got that information. And they looked at all three of those aspects. They went in and did things like test whether alleged anonymous information, whether they could aggregate it with some other publicly available data sets and figure out some identities. They tested that. They looked at third-party contracts with big vendors who are handling data, gathering and storage for the city. We're doing the same thing in Kansas City. And so it occurred to me that, and a lot of folks, that, well, all kinds of cities are having this problem. So maybe we can build some tool that other people could use. Now, again, as Jonathan said, I'm not the technology guy. An engineer drafted this little picture just as a starting place, because those of us from the law side were saying, well, in concept, it'd be great if we could say to the city, tell us what data you're gathering, how you're going about that, how it's being stored, and who you're going to give it to, and under what conditions. And we will load into the machine, for lack of a better term, I'll do it my crude way, some laws that are relevant, or all the laws we can find that are relevant, and some policy targets that we think are good, sensible policies balancing the justifiable thirst for transparency with the also justifiable desire to protect personal privacy. And so he said, well, maybe we can build something that's a pretty smart tool to do that. Now, we have the computer science students in the course looking at what technologies are already out there. We've talked to one of the leading law technologists, Mark Lawrenson, about something he calls choice boxing to help guide decisions where it's fuzzy and there are multiple factors. And we want to try to build something that might be able to gauge sort of how well are you doing with this data policy initiative in your particular city. Which brings me to this. We want to crowdsource that project, and this is just one example of something that can be done this way. So what are some of the likely suspects that could weigh in on this? Free Law Founders you've heard about, strong advocates of transparency. Daz is a member, Jonathan, I am, Ben, people in government across the country. How many have heard of the Metro Lab Network? Anybody? Ooh, okay, good. I will tell you about it. Metro Lab started at Carnegie Mellon, then got some White House support. It now has 34 cities involved in the US, each of them married up with at least one university, some of them two, that are working with them together on smart cities and urban design challenges. Now, I went to their summit in San Diego in June, and they were mostly the faculty from the universities were mostly from computer science, urban design, architecture, and the evolving area of urban science. And I think I was the only one there from a law faculty, but I found that they had a thirst for getting the law discipline represented in interdisciplinary teams looking at projects across the country. And a lot of these projects are going to have global implications too. We want to learn from other cities and work with them. And so I said, well, what if I told you that we had an evolving group of what we're calling CivicLawTech folks who are passionate entrepreneurs and leading technologists. I was here a year ago or so, not quite a year, it was in October, with Daza and Jonathan at the Geraldo Center in Brooklyn, and an adjunct to the Brooklyn Law School, and we got together a bunch of law schools and people from city governments and other institutions to try to get this sort of league going of people who have common problems. The Media Lab, Daza and the folks there are building us a website for CivicLawTech that we talked about. It's ready, the website's ready. And one thing led to another, and we now have, and this is, I'll finish up with, am I okay on time so far? Okay. Jonathan mentioned earlier the Legal Technology Laboratory. We, back in January, the Kauffman Foundation gave us some support to just sort of test this out. They call it the scoping phase. Several of us were involved. It was led by a fellow named John Cummins from Queen Mary University, London, who's not a lawyer. He helped start and manage a network of law schools that were giving advice to tech startups, or to continue to do that, and Jonathan Askin was part of the planning of that whole operation. But he's an ICT guy, and he's managing a portfolio of the dozen or so projects, I think a few more, that we've gathered up that involve things like smart contracting and semantic systems and data automation and document automation and data analytics. And the notion is to have a whole consortium of people who are qualified to help prototypes get developed and vetted. And also, we've now put in a grant that's going to be deliberated on, and we hope to get, but there's no guarantee, in September, to the Kauffman Foundation that will allow us to seed fund some projects and to then get them out in large impact ways. So I happen to think that legal hackers, international legal hackers, can join up with these types of networks and be very, very powerful. Now, I will close the way I did, I think, at the Media Lab when we gathered up 60 of these folks a little while ago, because although I'm old, most people seem to know this movie. How many have seen Animal House? Animal House, okay. So you remember at the end of, so we need to turn around a phrase from, I quote Animal House regularly. I went to a college, one of the authors wrote part of Animal House. And near the end of the movie, Otter says, what this situation absolutely demands is a stupid and futile act, and we're just the guys to do it. Well, what I think is that what this situation calls for, getting law schools more in tune and lawyers more in tune with interdisciplinary activities, they're going to help shape policy and maybe help us anticipate and write laws and regulations before the bad stuff happens and there's lots of litigation, sometimes at the same time, sometimes later. I think what we need is a smart and collaborative act. Erika, I love collaboratory, that was great. And I think you're just the guys and gals to do it, so do it.
All right.
As Jameson said, my name is Matt Weinmann. I'm the paralegal in Kelley, Drye & Warren's communications group. I've been there for just over a year. We recently we're in the process of implementing a project management tool, and so Jameson asked me to come and talk about our experience and the challenges that we have experienced going through that. So I'll talk about the background of the project management tool, the challenges we experienced to adoption, ways to overcome those hurdles, and then zoom out a little bit and talk about some of the bigger challenges to innovation in a law firm and where innovation can still come from. So the project management tool, it's still pretty rudimentary, but basically it'll track any task or ongoing project that we have from start to finish, whether that's starting with background research and all the way through to filing. Every step in the process would have its own element and allow us to track across clients, projects, and different attorneys. So late in 2015, we were drowning or on the verge of drowning in work, which is a great place to be in a law firm. You certainly want everyone to be busy, but we felt like we were just barely in control. And we're a pretty small team. I'm the only paralegal, so everyone has very competing demands. And so we realized we can't throw people at this problem. We're going to have to come up with something more innovative. We're going to need to turn to some technology. And so going into January of this year, I started to look at different platforms we can use. I started to interview associates and partners to understand what they thought the program, the tool should accomplish, but also start to hear out their concerns so I could try to address those as we move through the development process. We settled on Microsoft SharePoint, which was pretty friendly to use out of the box. We had people on staff who can help us get through that. I don't know why that's doing that, but and that took me about 2 months to put the tool together. Better. So it took me about 2 months to put the tool together, and then in about late April, May, we launched a beta test with 6 users. That led to some minor revisions. We tried to launch in June. That didn't quite go as planned, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So the goals we set for ourselves through those early conversations were, I think, mainly around understanding and being able to visualize our process so we could then understand how we could improve it, but then also have better control over our process. So efficiency, everyone here knows that projects will grow to fill the time, and we wanted everyone's time to be full of meaningful work, accountability. Ideally, that would work up and down the chain. Everyone would be able to see what everyone's working on, who's behind, who's ahead, who needs help, figure out where those bottlenecks we need to address are. Improving response times. We have great relationships with all of our clients, and we want to be very responsive to their needs. And so one of the concerns people identified was when we have so much going on, when you get that one-off question of, hey, when you have a minute, could you look at this question? We didn't want to be late in responding to those types of questions. We wanted to make sure we were delivering on time. Visibility and bandwidth. We, right now, the way our system works is Monday we have a team meeting. Everyone presents, this is what I'm working on this week. By Wednesday, that is completely obsolete. Everyone has a completely different picture, and that was not being communicated very effectively up the chain of command or broadly, just so people could understand who had time available. And long-term, the project management tool would also become a centralized hub for all key documents, work product, you name it, and also people wanted to have fewer emails in their inbox. Easier said than done. So we experienced a number of challenges, I think, to adoption. On a learning curve, there's a learning curve that I underestimated in terms of just physically using the tool. It's not particularly complicated. It does have its quirks. But I think the other learning curve beyond the mechanics of the tool is the process of using it. And I think our attorneys have personal processes that work very well for them. And they get done what have to get done. So it was a matter of getting them on a learning curve to changing that process and embracing the standardized digital version of that. We had varying degrees of adoption. There was resistance to the idea of every partner has to use the system, which then also caused resistance down the line as associates felt, well, if partner B doesn't expect me to have all my work in the system, do I still have to put my work for partner B in the system? Legitimate concern, but if they don't put it in, then we're also losing that visibility and bandwidth. We were also going to have limited integration with other software, primarily our document management system. That was something I couldn't change. Nothing was going to integrate with that archaic piece of technology. But that caused a lot of inherent friction of, if you're not, we didn't want to drive ourselves nuts with, well, what version is this? Because that's the value of the document management system, right? You can understand exactly what is current, what is old, and we were concerned about driving ourselves nuts over keeping track of that outside of the document management system. And then attorneys don't have time for beta. We did do a beta test, but after that was done, I think a lot of people wanted it to start working. And I was sort of caught in a chicken and the egg problem of people wanted it to work and didn't want to necessarily have to go through a messy opening phase where a lot of data has to be input. People have to learn how to use the system, and that's going to also shape how the system works as we tweak it and further refine it. And so that sort of expectation game was difficult. And So some of the thoughts that I tried to do and we're continuing to try to do to address these sort of tactical challenges are, first piece of advice I got was to create a crisis. And so I said, at the end of last year, we felt, wow, we have so much going on. How are we going to keep up with it? I think there was also a sense of, this is temporary. This will pass. This is just a rough patch. It's the end of the year. You know, we got to swim through the wall, and then it'll be done. And I wanted to try to collect data to show, well, there are things we could do better. There are changes we need to make. I think it's, in a way, hard to gather that data because typically we don't fail. The filing still goes out. We might have to run around with our hair on fire to make it go out, but it's never late. So you're not able to measure failure. And so as I was thinking about this presentation and reflecting on the process, I think if you want to create a crisis, if you want to make people start to identify where the problem is, you're really going to have to look at time entries and use that as your standard metric, which some people will be more comfortable with than others. Converting your biggest critic. I didn't have critics per se, but I did have skeptics. And so what I did there was incorporate my biggest skeptics into the beta test. So their feedback would be incorporated while we were still in development mode, rather than having them throw grenades and questions at what was a more finished product. I did have one champion. You can guess who that is, I think, those of you. But also thinking about it, so the flip side of addressing your critics is recruiting a champion. I should have recruited a champion partner who really understood the system more fully. That way we would have had someone ready to embrace and educate others about the system at every level of our organization. For me, as an associate and a partner. We tried to do a flash cutover. We should have been more forceful about it, and that's kind of hard to do because that would have forced everyone to start learning the system, start forming good habits all together at the same time. And expectations and accountability. All change has to come from the top down, and so leadership also has to be making their expectations clear. One thought we've had that I think we're going to implement to try to address some of our adoption challenges is canceling that Monday meeting where we present that snapshot of our week, and instead either devoting that time to people putting their week's task into the system, or ideally the system will still be maintained in real time, and then instead of that meeting, it'll be a chance for the partner to sit down, click through, and have a clear picture of what's going on rather than going around the table. And so the bigger challenges to innovation, I think people have talked a lot today about culture and the sort of nature of lawyers and their natural resistance to change at times, and the better human comfort with what's always been done. So I won't say more about that, but I will say there's a time and resources element to innovation. Right now in our group, I was allowed to devote a lot of time to the tool. I had my own time entry code. That's how dedicated we were about it. But that's a commitment. And I was able to make that commitment, but I don't know if you can necessarily ask an associate to make the same type of commitment. They're in a race against the clock to get in as many hours as they can. And if you say, well, we need you to work on this, innovative, great, inspirational tool, that's going to detract from other things. And at a time when everyone has to do more with less and for less, I think it's harder to get that equation right as you still try to find time to devote to innovation. Security and risk. This is something I think we talk about we read earlier this year, I think there were lots of news stories of law firms getting breached in various ways. Obviously, a law firm is a very fat, juicy target. It has lots of information about lots of different interesting people and their problems. And so any interesting tool, third-party app, platform that you're interested in, you're going to face a lot of questions about how secure is it? How is it going to integrate into our overall architecture of our security system? What sort of agreements do we need to make? This is one of the reasons we ended up picking Microsoft SharePoint, because it was fairly out of the box. People, it was trusted in our IT community and in the firm broadly, and we didn't have to start to go up the chain even outside of our group to just get permission to try this thing and with this platform, and that could have added I think, significant layers to the process. And long, slow fuses. So I'm on the technology committee at our firm, and we're in the process of implementing a new document management system that's going to be great, but it is going to take a fair amount of time to get there. And the big firm-wide changes take just a lot of time. You need to get a lot of input. I think people here would appreciate the fact that, you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So when you have a new tool, you need to figure out what's the right stuff we're going to carry forward. That's a process. And so when you're trying to have a tool that will be across your whole office, across your whole firm, you have to have enough interest and strong leadership to be able to push and maintain that momentum as you go forward, or else it'll start to fall apart. And then Jameson was encouraging me to think about, well, how do we solve these problems? And I think the flip side of a culture that doesn't embrace change is to start creating a culture that does embrace change. And obviously you're all a part of that. But I think you have to think actively about it in terms of saying, well, because I think many young attorneys today are more digital natives and more ready to try new technology and experiment. But it's also human to start to get comfortable with what you like. And so if you start to think now and realize I need to stay just as open to the latest and greatest down the road as I am right now, that's an important realization. And listen and observe your clients. They're going to be ahead of you in terms of new technology, new ways of doing things. We had a client a couple months ago who told our boss, we don't use internal email anymore. I imagine they use Slack or something similar. And my boss had the exactly right idea about it. He said, well, why can't we do that? And that would be a huge dramatic change for us, but it was taking the right attitude, I think, about learning from what your clients are doing and try to embrace that as well. Asking questions. There are, I think, a couple different ways to take this. You can try to find time to sit back and ask yourself the big questions of broadly, what can we automate? What can we get rid of? Where are the inefficiencies? But then it's also, and this is sort of a cultural thing as well, it's important when a task is done, when a project is done, to take the time and do a sort of after-action review and say, what could we have done better? What didn't go so well? What are we going to learn for next time? And but that's again taking time to think this stuff through. And then finally, relying on your younger staff. Like your clients, they're going to be ahead of you in what's the latest and greatest technology, and what is a Pokemon Go. And so you have to have a culture again that is willing to seek out their input, embrace their input. And I'll leave you with the thought that while all innovation has to be driven from the top down to make it stick, not every great idea has to start at the top. So.
Okay. Well, while Andreas is getting the laptop set up, we're gonna get people into groups. That's gonna be part of our workshop. So one of the main one of the reasons I want to do this is to get people to share some of their ideas and get talking about legal innovation, the skills, disciplines we think are going to move the industry forward. The main focus is we want to get people actually interacting and getting to know each other. So at least hopefully at a minimum, you'll get some value out of that. I know it's late at the end of the day, so I don't know how much people want to be digging in and thinking about the different questions of legal innovation. So my name is Linna. I'm the director of LegalRnD, the Center for Legal Services Innovation at Michigan State University College of Law. And Andreas?
Well, I'm the founder of Alster's company, founded in Chile, South America, and basically we are part of an legal tendency. And yeah, that's a short.
Okay, so Andreas and I both have proposed doing something on legal services innovation. So Dempsey Jameson put us together, and so we've talked a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, and we put together a slide deck actually today. And one of the things that's driving what we want to talk about is that there's been a lot of hype about robots practicing law and disrupting the legal industry and things like that. And as practitioners, I've practiced for 10 years, and I've been at Michigan State Law College now just for the last couple of years. We want to talk a little bit about kind of getting back to basics and just asking some of the questions. What are the basic skills lawyers and law students need to learn to make a difference with legal services right now. And then, of course, I mean, artificial intelligence and machine learning technology is going to impact the law in other ways in the future that it's not impacting it now. So we also want to talk about where are there opportunities to be learning in those different areas. So our hypothesis really is that disruption is too big of a promise in nearly all the market segments, and that adoption of different technologies and disciplines is what's going to move the industry forward. And the following skills are going to drive adoption. Process improvement, project management, metrics, just basic metrics to start measuring what it is we do in the legal industry, measuring value, measuring quality, data analytics, okay, starting with simple stuff before we start getting to the ideas of using legal analytics and predicting case outcomes, but that's coming. And then technology. And when we think about technology, it's important too, I think, to stratify what's going on with technology, and some people are starting to do that. I think in a very basic way, there's basic, intermediate, and advanced technology. Basic technology is like the Microsoft Office suite. There are too many lawyers and law students who don't know how to use Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. PDFs, understanding how to create PDFs, understanding things about metadata. Far too many lawyers and law students who don't even understand metadata, right? And why you might create a PDF when you share information rather than just shooting across a Word document or an Excel document. Intermediate level technology, kind of things like expert systems, document automation, case management systems. And then advanced technology, starting to learn and understand about machine learning, natural language processing, things like that. And it's really important for lawyers, I mean, I believe, and there are people who are debating some of these things, right? How much lawyers need to know about coding, and I'd like you guys to talk about this in the groups a little bit. But there's so much going on in the world right now that's run by algorithms, and too many lawyers just have no idea the technology behind that, no context, no connection to it. And I think it's folly to think that we can just appoint experts to handle all these issues. Like, we're lawyers and we're relegating ourselves to the sideline and all of them, but that's one of the things we want to talk about. So Larry talked a little bit earlier, Larry Bridgesmith, about the tools, but I want to be thinking about in legal hackathons, well, what are the skills? What are the skills we really need in lawyers and other participants? Who can we be bringing in? And what skills do we need to develop in lawyers? How much do they need to learn to code? How much do they need to learn about statistics, regression analysis, machine learning, things like that? So Andres is going to talk a little bit about the process.
Well, the rules we wanted to apply, it's basically World Coffee methodology. And basically we wanted to set up 4 tables or groups of people. Each table is going to have 1 leader, and each leader will ask some questions regarding those kind of markets. I mean, corporations, or the application of this hypothesis in corporations, consumers, legal aid, and government and courts. And basically, well, the 20 minutes are going to be shortened, but because we need to do other activities too, but we don't expect that anybody knows about this specific topics, and that's the idea. So let's gather and try to solve these 2 questions. I will be leading one table. Dan is going to be leading another one, and we need 2 volunteers leading our 2 tables, please. I don't know if somebody can.
Dan Lear, you're right.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks everyone. So we're going to wrap up now, and we were going to report out, but what we're going to do is collect some information from the groups, and we're going to try to circulate something, maybe even write a blog post about what we did. So thanks a lot everyone for participating.
All right.
So it's been a long and thought-filled and speech-filled and workshop-filled day. And so the way we'd like to close out today is with a session, and this is one of the sessions that I've been most excited about since it was pitched about a month ago. So Nitya Bansal from Delhi is here from the Delhi chapter, and she's going to lead a brief workshop on mindfulness for lawyers to be followed up tomorrow, right, with an additional one for the morning.
So hi everyone, I'm Nitya, I'm from India. And I was supposed to take the workshop, which I think I'll take tomorrow morning. Right now, because we are just winding up, so I think we can just wind up with a refreshing exercise. Does that suit all? Yeah? So we are done for the day, and I would just request, can I request everyone to sit in a way that maybe back in the lines, so that what we have to do is I will be doing something, I'll do a particular gesture. Everybody, so the person sitting here will follow me, like Daria is sitting there, so she'll follow me. Then Kevin will follow Daria. So after a millisecond gap or a second gap, yeah. So whatever I do, Daria follows, then Kevin follows, and that ways till the last person. So maybe we can go this ways. Then we go to Miller, then Daniel, then Dan. Yeah. So basically Miller follows him, Daniel follows Miller, Dan follows Daniel, and okay. So yeah. You follow, so this ways, and that's, sorry, that is, sorry? Present. Okay. Eliza, can you see, yeah, so you'll follow him, and then you follow Eliza, and that, so on, yeah? Abhi, yeah, we will do that, okay? Okay. Okay. So a second, just after a second, okay? So, I think, yeah, okay, so it'll be, okay, cool. So, did everyone enjoy the rain? Okay, so I think we'll end it here, and maybe the meditation I'll do tomorrow.
You have plenty of time if you feel like you have time.
Okay, so, okay, we have time?
Yeah.
Just let me have my laptop. So I wanted to present, what I'm presenting on is mindfulness for lawyers. Okay. And I don't know what usually people understand by mindfulness. Any suggestions? What do you think? What is mindfulness? Okay. Meditation. Very nice. Being present and aware. Anybody else? Being focused. Being focused. Yeah. Any other? Anybody else? So.
still not seeing it over here.
So,
yeah, I think we're just turning it on, so it's not.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing it over here.
So, as lawyers, I believe most of us, we are surrounded with lots of conflict. So not here, because a lot of us here are not really practicing or are not really working as traditional lawyers. But most of the lawyers who are practicing in the traditional ways, they're surrounded with lots of conflict, hostility. Okay. So, okay. So we see this image here, yeah? So there's a difference between being mindful, full of things in the mind, and being mindful. So mindful is basically being calm, being mindful means to be calm, to stabilize the mind, to understand the mind, choose effective states of mind, and change the mind. I will not go through all these definitions because we anyways don't have time, but like somebody said, being aware, being present, being non-judgmental about whatever you're facing, and being accepting of whatever, difficulties, good times, bad times, whatever stress, anxiety, whatever you're facing, being accepting of that and not being judgmental of that. Okay? So mindfulness, a lot of people believe is like, meditating, going to some mountains and meditating there, or even at your own room. So there's something called solitary meditation, solitary mindfulness. But that is not the only way people meditate. That is not the only mindfulness. There's something called portable mindfulness, which is actually you can be mindful while carrying out your daily functions, while working, while studying, and whatever you're doing. So that is the kind of mindfulness we recommend for lawyers, of course. And why do lawyers need mindfulness? I think we've pretty much discussed it all. We have a typical work culture. We have a culture of verbal aggression. We are not supposed to, disclose our emotions to people. We are supposed to cover up our emotions. We have lots of stress. The work that we do involves a lot of volume. So there's a lot of volume of work. And, we are very skeptic. We are supposed to be very skeptic, very untrusting, questioning. So all that may result in anxiety, stress, substance dependence at times, and attrition. So lawyers, of course, that's the reason why lawyers must especially be mindful and do mindfulness practices. Now, how do meditations help, or how does mindfulness help us? It helps develop or inculcate emotional intelligence. It helps develop patience, joyful effort, and compassion. What is emotional intelligence? We know, right? Anybody? Okay, so emotional intelligence is, of course, being able to relate to yourself and to others, being able to relate to what the other person is feeling, and, being more empathetic. So by being more mindful, you are able to be more aware of your own state of mind, state of heart, and you're able to relate to others. Now, there has been increasing scientific validation that mindfulness or even meditation practices, they really help in reducing stress, anxiety. So there are sciences like neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, which say that even adult brains, they change. Like earlier, the science said that, the brains get developed till the age of adults in infancy, like 0 to 2 or 0 to 7 years. But now science has proven that by meditating and by exercising, etc., adult brains also evolve. Okay, so this maybe we can take 2 minutes just to reflect, or I think let's just take a minute to reflect whatever we did today. Yeah, a minute, just breathe. Think about whatever nice things you learned, whatever information download we had today. Just a minute, okay? Yep. Does it feel relaxing? Do we feel relaxed? Okay. So mindfulness also helps develop patience. Patience, of course, improves communication. You learn to take your own time to speak. You learn to attune to the speaker. You learn to be more curious when you're listening. So overall communication improves. Mindfulness helps you develop joyful effort. So we have a Sanskrit quotation, saying, which is karmanye vadhika raste ma phaleshu kadachan, which means one has the right to work only but never to its fruits. So our duty is to work, not to be concerned about the results, whether they will bear fruit or not. Let not the fruits of action be your motive, nor let your attachment be to inaction. So you should always keep giving your full effort. And I think we'll just end with one last exercise. Just look to the person sitting to your, so just pair up, yeah, and just thank them for being here today. Appreciate them, wish them well for the evening, and tell them to have a good time today. Okay? Okay, all right. Bye-bye.